Alrighty, welcome back. So not sure where this video is going to land in relation to the overall build videos for tanks number 1 and 2. Right here is tank number 2. As you can see, another successful one. So no leaks on this one. Already did the spray down wash test with Dawn dish soap. Gone over the whole thing. No bubbles whatsoever. This balloon here has held air at the same amount since yesterday. So I'll leave this here for a while, but as of now I have 2 successful tanks. So I'm 2 for 2 with my very first tanks, which is awesome. My goal for this video here is to have it really just be not necessarily RV10 specific, but tank sealant specific, building tanks, what I really wish I would have known earlier on, what would have really saved my time, and what would have led to successful tank building from the very beginning. Because as you probably saw in that first video, I stumbled my way through the first tank. Really struggled with making a mess, not working cleanly, really working inefficiently, and at the end I was just jamming, and it became actually, I wouldn't say necessarily enjoyable to be tank building, but it was definitely less of a pain. One of those things where you're working against the clock, you have tank sealant carrying on you, you start getting messy, and it could go to hell really quickly. So the whole idea here is I'm going to try to give you all the information that if I knew from the beginning would have helped me to kind of start with a leg up coming into the tank building. So first thing, I'm going to move that camera around to the other side. So turning the camera around here, the whole idea here is I have everything ready to go into to hopefully efficiently convey my message. But this table here, I have everything that has to do with what I learned to handle Proseal, to not make a mess, and to work quickly. Alright, so first thing I want to get into is gloves. You probably saw in my very first fuel tank video early on, I was wearing 2 pairs of gloves because that's the general consensus, is you're supposed to wear 2 pairs, with the idea being that if you get any Proseal on them, get sticky, get messy, you can strip that second pair off, quickly put on another pair of fresh gloves, and you're not dealing with sweaty hands, sweaty skin trying to get that second pair on. That's fine and dandy, it works for you, great. But I will say that second tank over there behind the camera, I wore 1 pair the whole time. I did not strip gloves off, I just worked clean. And the reason why I was able to work clean is because I have gloves that are not the color black. So it's really hard to find any other color but black, especially on Amazon. They really pitch black gloves to you because they're cool and tactical and whatnot, but you can't see Proseal on them. So what's nice about these bright ones or blue ones, that I wore blue ones earlier on as well, is you can quickly identify Proseal on your hands. So as you're working, you may not realize it, but you may bump into the Proseal, whatever, and you end up with black Proseal on there. You can quickly see it, quickly go over to the next step, acetone, and quickly clean it off and continue to work. Instead of wearing black gloves, you wouldn't necessarily see that tank sealant on there, and you may end up grabbing your hat, grabbing your shirt, whatever, grabbing tools and getting Proseal everywhere. So I think gloves is a real critical one, finding a bright pair of gloves, either blue, bright, whatever, anything but black, so you can easily identify it, easily clean it, and move on, move forward. Anyways, I would say it was pretty successful. Using this method, I only ended up getting Proseal on 1 shirt early on, which was actually, I think, my very first day of using the tank sealant. I got Proseal on my shirt. So from there forward, did not ruin any other clothes, did not ruin any other hats, did not get Proseal anywhere where it shouldn't have been. So working clean, get a bright pair of gloves, move on. So rags. I went through an entire box of these rags here, so 300 rags to a box. I used a lot. Anytime I saw tank sealant anywhere, grab a rag, fold it up, and you can use it quite a bit. I mean, you could fold it, spray it down with acetone, use one side, refold it, whatever. But the idea here, I think, with the tank building is you're not trying to save the planet, you use the dang rags. I went through a box, and again, did not get Proseal where I didn't want it to go. But have a box of rags nearby, be able to quickly grab them and move on. Next thing I learned is acetone. Acetone works great to clean things up. So does MEK. I mentioned in the first video where I originally was using a little bit of this to do a little bit of tool cleanup at the end. So it does work for cleaning. Works better, works quicker in my opinion than acetone. But I understand it's a little bit less good for you compared to acetone. So I did have the garage open using it. I did as well using acetone. But MEK is a little bit more aggressive. If you live in Arizona, we still can get this stuff. It's a little bit harder to find. You can't find it at the big name stores. But I did find True Value does carry real MEK, and it's good stuff, so it's good stuff to have. But if you don't have access to MEK, I wouldn't worry whatsoever. Gallon of acetone worked great. So I went through an entire gallon on both tanks. I just popped this one open recently. So maybe a little bit over a gallon, but again, I cleaned like no other. Every time I saw acetone, I was cleaning it. And then the way I found the easiest way to apply it is these little squirt bottles. So Amazon, I forget how much this was, but Amazon has these squirt bottles loaded up with acetone, and it's really easy to come by, grab it, you can squirt it, just being able to have this there, not having to unscrew the cap. In the first video you probably saw, every time I wanted to use that acetone, I was unscrewing the cap and then having to dump it out on a rag. Anyways, using the squirt bottle here, you can quickly apply it to a rag and get to it. And I should be wearing rubber gloves, I know that, but yeah, so quickly spray it on a rag, quickly use it, and then just refill this thing every so often, but it makes it really quick to apply. So yeah, moving on forward from that. Another thing that I continually research is whether or not I should be dunking my clecos in acetone after, how I should be handling them, how I should be cleaning them. But thinking back to, I think it was the rudder build, or earlier on with some other build using the trailing edge wedge, those use tank sealant, and I wasn't too careful when it came to cleaning those, and I found that the tank sealant eventually will come off of them. So I was working clean with these tanks. I was definitely working clean, trying to keep a rag nearby. I would keep a rag, I would keep this acetone nearby, squirt it every so often, have a nice damp rag with it, and with the idea being as I pull clecos out, I pull it out of the tank or whatever, grab the acetone rag, do a quick little swipe of it just to get the big bulky stuff off, and just throw it in a bin. The tank sealant, yeah, it does stay on there a little bit, but as you use them, it all comes off. Like there's a little bit remaining on here right now, but it comes off as you use it on the next part, whatever. It'll slowly crumble off and fall off of the cleco. I did not find that I had to leave these soaking in a bin full of MEK or acetone or whatever, because at the end of the day, they're just clecos. And if I get them gummed up to where they're not going to work, I have so many clecos. As another area where I could have just wasted so much time trying to overly clean these things and keep them in tip-top shape. I think at the end of the day, they're probably 50, 70 cents or so. I'd much rather move forward, progress, than waste time while tank sealant's curing on me while I'm trying to build a part. So again, it falls off. I wouldn't worry about it. Just rub it down real quick. If there's any remaining amount that dries on there, great. The parts later on, as you're moving in and out of holes, it'll strip it off later on down the road. So I didn't worry too much about that. Next step is when it comes to mixing Proseal. Another area where I feel like you can overcomplicate things and really get silly when it comes to how you mix your Proseal, where you mix it. So shout out to Clay, another local builder. He's given me a lot of advice. But he had mentioned picking up plexiglass. So I went to Lowe's to find plexiglass, and they want a whole bunch of money for the plexiglass. I forget how much it was, but it just looks silly. But going through my supplies in our house, I found these acrylic, these acrylic sign holders. I had these originally, I think, for holding open houses, like putting like pamphlets inside of. But took one acrylic sign holder, took it to the bandsaw, cut it into pieces. I ended up getting 4 pieces of acrylic out of it. And these are really nice for mixing on because you can use it, and then also after it dries, scrape it back off using a little razor blade here. Scrape off the remaining tank sealant after it dries, and you're good to go again. So I would just literally scrape it off after it dried for a few days, take a little bit of acetone, not too much, and just kind of clean it off. And these here went through both fuel tanks using 4 of these guys. So $5 at Walmart is how much these acrylic sign holders are, and I would totally do it again. The other reason, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but the other reason is when you're using it on your scale, odds are when you're going to mix this stuff, you're going to cover part of your scale, so it's clear. You can see, you can still stack your tank sealant here. If any overflows to the side, whatever, but you can still see your screen, which is really nice. You still see that readout. So I would totally do it again. Either go find some plexiglass at Lowe's or acrylic sheets or whatever, or go to Walmart, buy an acrylic sign holder for $5 and create a couple of these. Other thing I want to mention when it comes to mixing Proseal that I found was really helpful is using popsicle sticks. Of course, you'll need a lot of these, but cutting the edge off. So just taking a pair of wire cutters here and cutting the end of your popsicle sticks off, having a couple of these handy nearby. And the reason why it's helpful is as you have that tank sealant, if you were trying to use the rounded side here, you wouldn't be getting full full coverage on that, and you'd realize if you turn it over after the fact, you'd have a whole bunch of unmixed Proseal from where the edge wasn't engaging. So if you cut the end off as a squared off end, but loading up syringes, loading up the cartridges for a Semco gun, whatever, getting it ready to transfer it to wherever you're trying to transfer it to, being able to scrape the bottom there and getting full coverage really helps to get all that Proseal off, get it to wherever you want it to go. So that was super helpful. Moving on to the next one is scales. So this one here, don't skimp out on a scale. I originally tried using a kitchen scale, which worked, but this only goes down to whole grams. So this tank sealant goes at 10:1. You could be off by quite a bit when this only goes to the whole gram, because when you're mixing up a rib, which for reference here, ribs, I use 30 grams of sealant per rib. You're only working with 3 grams of hardener in that case. So that may be 3.4 grams or maybe 2.6 grams. So it could be off by quite a bit in rounding to the nearest gram. Yeah, so I would not be using a kitchen scale. I did actually I think it was only after that first day or so, I ended up purchasing a scale on Amazon. So this was, I think, $11, which actually goes to the 100th of a gram. So much better readout. Also, the kitchen one would time out on you. The main tank sealant ingredient, and then I was putting the hardener onto it and trying to get it to the exact right amount with that kitchen scale, and then it would time out on me. And I luckily was already at the point of being at that 1 gram ratio or a 10:1 ratio. But that one times out. This one did not ever time out on me. I'm not sure how quickly it times out, but it's just another thing to take into consideration, because it would be a huge bummer to be mixing up, especially a big batch, and not having all of the hardener there, having it time out on you, turning it back on, and now you don't know what your ratio is that's sitting in front of you. So get a good scale, $11 on Amazon, don't skimp out. That worked really, really well. Moving on to the next one. So cartridges. Earlier on, this was another area where I spent so much time researching how to apply the tank sealant. There's a whole bunch of methods out there. I've seen people loading up, I think Plain Lady used plastic baggies, little Ziploc baggies, loading it into there, kind of treating it like, I think, like cake batter, or like squeezing it out, kind of like toothpaste, squeezing it out of a bag. That works, that's fine and dandy, but these cartridges are just, they'll solve all the world's issues. These are just the greatest thing to come to tank building. So those really, really saved the day, made it so easy to apply tank sealant, made it clean, made it efficient. Yeah, so anyways, these cartridges here, I originally started with 100 milliliter cartridges. It was, for reference, 5 of them for $13 on Amazon. 100 mils worked great, but you don't need 100 mils to do a tank. I was only mixing up, I don't know how much it would equate to, but I was mixing up 30 grams at a time per tank. So I didn't need all 100 mils to be doing things. The only time these came in handy, the 100 mil ones, was when doing the back baffle, because you really have to load up a lot of sealant. I forget the exact amount of sealant I use. Probably somewhere around 100, 120 grams of sealant total doing that back baffle. So that's a big session there. Using the big ones, that worked on the back end. At that back baffle, I did end up though having to mix up a batch, go through the entire thing, and then mix up another batch, and then refill the cartridge and do it again. So anyways, getting to things here again, these cartridges were awesome. So the 100 mil cartridges, I would probably not do again. I'd probably just stick to 60s for the whole thing, just because they're smaller, they're easier to use, and especially when you're putting certain parts in there where you want to get inside after and apply more. You working with the smaller cartridges was just a lot easier. These 60 mil ones was easier to get around, and you honestly don't need 100 mils outside of big applications like maybe the back baffle. So anywho, these were awesome. 5 for $13 and 10 for $14 on the 60 mils. Yeah, so you can reuse these cartridges. I mentioned that first tank building video, especially at the end, where I had it fly into the tail cone. If you didn't see that, watch the end of the first tank building video where I almost put a dent in the tail cone using an air compressor. But these can be reused, can be cleaned. And the way I did it was after I used them, after I applied all the tank sealant that I wanted to use, even if there was some remaining, great, leave it. But then pull out the cartridge either part of the way or most of the way, so that way it doesn't seal up in the front. The reason being, I had a couple of them actually dry up inside of there at the very tip, and when it's stacked full of sealant, it really turned into a hard area to get rid of, and actually got stuck. So anyways, after you're done using it, pull it out. At least these ones, at least I pulled them all the way out, and then I just would put them right back in, and they dried like that, so that way it's out of the way. And then afterwards, you can pull it out of there, and sit here and work at the back end of it and peel off the tank sealant. And then at the front here, kind of work the tip around and get enough of it off, taking an air compressor to the front here and then just slowly working away at it. It'll start to, the air will start to separate that dried tank sealant out of there and eventually leave you with these nice little guys. So they can be reused, I would say over time though. They do end up getting stickier and stickier, mainly on this rubber piece here, because as you're peeling this tank sealant off, I think in turn you're also kind of starting to work the rubber and kind of get that rubber to be not as smooth as before, or make it a little bit less smooth of a surface, and that tank sealant will start to stick more and more and more on the rubber. Same thing goes on the plastic, it'll start to stick more and more. So I would say you probably will get like 4 uses or so, maybe 5 uses or so out of each of these cartridges. So one package of these 60 mils should get you through a full tank. So that's that. Yeah, so the other option for applying tank sealant is a Semco gun. So I think that's what this is called. Anyways, Clay has this, he's a local builder. He already had the Semco gun, so he's letting me borrow it. So thanks Clay for letting me borrow it. But man, these are expensive. I think it's $500 or so. And it uses regular air pressure from your air hose. You load a cartridge in the thing, load it together, and it can real smoothly, real easily apply tank sealant to any surface. It worked great. I would probably not buy this if I was to be doing things. I love these cartridges. There were times when those cartridges worked better than this, especially getting inside the tank after the fact, getting behind. If you had certain areas to get behind to apply sealant, those are much more mobile. This was really nice though when it came to the back baffle, so you could just load that cartridge up and just get a consistent line all the way down the line, all the way down the skin. So for places like the back baffle where you're applying a large amount of tank sealant, on the second tank here I use this, and it was really handy there, just because you can get a really, really consistent bead and just slowly work it. The trigger will let you go as fast or slow as you want with that tank sealant. So that was beautiful, but again, if I was doing this again, if I was going back to earlier on, get the cartridges. So the Semco gun is awesome and all, but the other area where it's not so awesome is the price. So cartridges are very expensive because airplane. These cartridges here, again, were $10 for $14 for the 60 mil cartridges for these syringes. Semco gun in total, because you have to buy everything in parts, and they're expensive because airplane, but for 10 different cartridges, 10 different sets of cartridge parts, it ended up being $46 from Aircraft Spruce. So the way they work, the reason why they're expensive is they sell all these individually. So you have the cartridge that you purchase, you have the nozzle that you purchase, and then you have the back plunger that you purchase. The whole idea is you take this, you load it with sealant up front, you take this back portion here, you close that off, and the gun is pushing air on the back side of that, and on the front it has this nozzle. And again, it works great, but man, it's pricey for what you get compared to using the syringes on Amazon. 40-some bucks, 46 bucks for 10 of these things is pretty pricey. The other issue I had is you can't really reuse them, or I did not find a way to reuse them because I had tried. I took this guy here, which I used, took the front end off, and I was able to get the tank sealant out of the nozzle. So I think you could probably reuse these nozzles here, but I could not for the life of me force that plunger back out with tank sealant hardened in there. Yeah, so like I mentioned, the nozzle is probably reusable. Like this one here, I've not done it yet, but I'm trying it. But if you untwist the back end here, that tank sealant should actually pull out of that nozzle. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so anyways, the nozzle comes off, so you can reuse this. Great, you just saved $1. I think they're $1 or $1.20 or so on Spruce. So you can save one part to reuse, but you're buying so many different cartridges. So again, going back to how I would apply things if I did this again, 100% these syringes. If I'm feeling fancy, I'm gonna purchase 5 of those 100s. Maybe I'll use the 100 milliliter ones on the back baffle or any other really large batches, or if I was feeling really frosty and I wanted to take on doing 2 ribs at once, get a 100 mil one, load that thing up with a whole bunch of sealant. Those are great. I would rely heavily though on the 60 milliliter cartridges, those 10 of them for 14 bucks. Use those, have a little lineup of every time you use it, put the used one at the end. As you work your way down the line, you'll eventually get to a portion where you have used cartridges and you can sit there and pull them apart, clean them, and reuse them, move forward. So that's everything as far as handling Proseal, how to work cleanly and efficiently when it comes to building.
Well, hopefully this video was useful for you. I know when I was early on in the tank build process, I was definitely suffering from analysis paralysis, and really could have used the information that I learned throughout the creation of these tanks here. So anywho, I hope it helps some of you out there. I know some of the stuff I could have been wrong. I could have other ways to do things, whatever the case may be. If you have any other advice or corrections or want to chime in, please do so down below. That's one of the greatest things that I've found about the builder community is everyone who's willing to help out and offer advice where able. So anywho, as far as the products go, I'm testing out this whole affiliate link type deal through Amazon. So the last video I made a whopping 88 cents off of some syringes. So anyways, all those links will be in this video here for any of those Amazon items mentioned. I'll throw that Walmart in one. I don't make money off the Walmart one, but anywho, I'm trying to see if I can make it up to $10 maybe and start earning some money off these videos to recoup the overall build costs. No, that's not going to happen. But anywho, if you want to use those links, please do so. If not, no worries. But yeah, anyways, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Next video will be flaps, and we'll get to building this airplane. So thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one. Adios.